This is Sanskrit, so it goes into, some people say that there is a mixture between Sanskrit and Egyptology, or the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and Hebrew. And of course I can see a correlation myself in that. So when you get into Sanskrit, you get into a lot of Hindu stories and mythologies, and when you get into the depth of most any story or any mythology from any nation, it's saying the same thing. And generally it's the story of the sun and the moon and the astrological wheel working together on the earth. That's what the stories are about. That's what, I mean, anybody can think a little bit. If you remove the sun, then the earth is just a ball of clay. I mean, it's no life here. So the life of the earth obviously is centered in the sun and around the sun. So all the stories are about the S-U-N, sun. And so there's a passage of scripture in the Old Testament most of us are familiar with, and I'll read it. You don't necessarily have to turn over there, but it's in 1 Chronicles, and it's called the Temple of Solomon. How many of you have ever heard of the Temple of Solomon?
Oh yeah.
Well, everybody's heard of the Temple of Solomon, but there is no Temple of Solomon. And so you have to ask yourself the big question: if you've heard of the Temple of Solomon, they talk about the Temple of Solomon, but yet we can't even find where the Temple of Solomon was. We can't even find a foundation stone to build such a massive structure, to build such a temple. Then you have to ask the question, was there a Temple of Solomon? You think, well, I mean, there's all kinds of temples that way predate the Temple of Solomon. And you'll find that many, if not most, of the ancient temples that were really places and schools of learning. That's basically what the temple was. It was a place of worship, but worship in that perspective was learning. It was going to school. It was finding out about who we are, about what I am and what I'm about. But you'll find so many of the temples, the massive temples that were built to stand for thousands and thousands of years, are torn down. And I think it's sad when you go on the internet and you look at all the ancient, or look at a lot of the ancient temples around the world, and you see, wow, they're just in ruins, or they're just columns left. And I don't know about you, but I always ask my question, how in the world did such massive structures fall down or get torn down? And of course, you go and do some historical research, you'll find the Roman Church went out the whole world with the purpose to destroy, plunder, and do away with any material that's contrary to what they were trying to establish. Which I think is a very sad thing. But nevertheless, that's history. It's just history. Doesn't change the truth, because the truth, the earth is giving forth the truth. It just is. It's giving up in all kinds of ways through archaeological finds, digs, and everything else. It's giving up the information. So the truth is to me, the truth is an ongoing thing. Truth is not something that's in stone, that wow, when I find this, whoa, I found the truth. It's like Kirby made a point last night, or this morning, I forget, we were talking, when you're in the first grade, you learn basic things, but you don't go from the first grade to college level. You don't. You have that progression between, and so you retain the things that you learned in the first grade. Those are elementary things. But if you all remember in Hebrews chapter 6, it says, let's lay aside the elementary things. And let's go into the things that have solidity to them. Not that the elementary things didn't have something that was of a solid base, but most of the time they were pabulum. They were milk for babes, And it's like we are not, as adults, we are not sucking the tit of mama to get nourishment anymore. Okay? So, and we have to realize that and recognize that all of us should be on a quest for the deeper truths, the things that are sustainable. Because the things that are sustainable are the things that are going to life me and give me this life that I long for, that I need to maintain me and to keep me in this path. So I want to read you a few things, and I'm going to, this is something I wrote that has to do with the Sanskrit. And for me, the Sanskrit, again, tying together Hebrew and the Egyptian hieroglyphs. But this is in 1 Chronicles chapter 6, it's verse 10. I read it occasionally, and I read it for just to establish a point. And the point that I would like to establish, I'll show you in just a minute. It says in verse 10, it says, in Johanna, which is the same as John in the New Testament. Johanna begat Azariah, and Johanna's name means, it just simply means love. And the first emanation of love we find in what we call the Trinity of God. And in that Trinity we see light, life, and love. Generally light referring to the Father God, life referring to the Father or male, love referring to the feminine nurture. And so it's in those, and we see those three concepts and those ideas, and they make up the whole of Scripture. So it's things that I use and I go back and forth in Scripture that say the same thing. And those are three, the number of three. When I see the number of three, I realize it's the same thing as saying 12. When I see the number 7, I realize that it also incorporates the same thing as 12. And so, coming back to different stories and analogies, if you're talking about 3, are you talking about 12? If you're talking about 12, or are you talking about 3? The answer is yes. And that gets confusing, especially if we are in elementary thinking, basic, very, very elementary thinking, and we are sitting and trying to learn things at a college level. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's imperative that we move on. To not move on is to become static. And to become static, as I shared with you last night, that's the Hebrew word tov, which just simply means to be complacent. It just simply means to be still. And how many of you have ever with a child or a grandchild or someone, and you said, now you just be good. And what you really meant, and you said it yourself, but what you really meant is you sat there and be still. And I know you did that. I did it all the time, but I didn't equate being still, static, with the Hebrew tov, good. But that's exactly what it means. But what we did is we have, under religion, we've been seduced with this ideology of good versus evil. Yeah. That there's this contrast. We didn't know that the Hebrew word ra was the word for energy, moving. It's wanting to move the good in a right direction. And we weren't taught that, so we didn't know that. So we didn't know how to assimilate Genesis chapter 2 at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We were taught to stay away from it. Yeah. My God, if you partake of that, you will be as God. Well, why was I created? To be as God. That's exactly what it tells you in Genesis 1:26. Yet when you get to Genesis chapter 3 and read it in verse 5, it says, oh, look at them now. They have become as God. God, wasn't that the intent and the purpose? And yet we have been taught to look at that like, oh no, now it's wrong. They might live forever as God. Well, what could be wrong with that? But you know how we were taught, don't you? You better watch out. That's the devil. You got to, because you're wicked and you were born in corruption anyway, and you're a sinner, you got to die and go to heaven. Because that's the only place that it's going to be good. So, anyway, these stories and the progression of learning is incorporated in all cultures and all lands. And there are master numbers that you have to come to realize that each number, whether it's 12 or 3, is talking about exactly the same thing. And so a lot of the reasons I put all of these things on the board is to see that. And what thing is it coming to? It's coming to the very first blip in Hebrew. When you look at a succession in the Hebrew, and you start out here in Genesis 1:1, and the very first blip that you come to is that blip right there, and then you go through 200, I think it's 256,000 glips. I have the Torah. I have the Hebrew Torah, and it's not that I can sit down and read the Hebrew Torah. I can sit down and read the code, the glips in it. That's the only way I can do it. I've taught myself how to read the glips. So I can look at it without the vowel points. It's the vowel points that makes it into a word. And if you look at the Torah, it is a succession of these glyphs without break, without chapter, without verse, without punctuation, without comma, without anything. and yet they go back and they break it wherever they want to. It's amazing how you can take the very first sentence in Genesis 1 and break it in different places, and you would be amazed at the different things you can come up with just with those about 14 or 16 glyphs. Different words that you can come up with totally change the whole idea of Genesis chapter 1. And so, anyway, it's a succession of these glyphs, and you come over to Deuteronomy, the 31st chapter, I believe it's chapter 31, seems like verse 20. Let me just see what it says here. Chapter 34, verse 12. You come all the way through the Torah to the chapter, and you come to this last glyph, which is that, and this is the Lamed. And you have the Beth and you have the Lamed, and when you take those two glyphs and put them together, they are the Hebrew word for heart. Have you ever heard of out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks? Okay? And that is very true. That is a truth. So, would it be common ideology to think if the first glyph is the Beth and the last glyph is the Lamed, in other words, the beginning and the end of the Torah, those two glyphs put together is referring to the heart? Could it not be that everything from Genesis 1:1 to the end of Deuteronomy is about the heart? And what is about the heart? We're not talking about the cardia, the pumper that pumps blood through you. When you look up the word heart with that word right there, that's called leb. That's the Hebrew word leb for heart. That's how you pronounce it. You just put a vowel point between the L and the B. That's an L sound and that's a B sound. Bet, lamed. And you put a vowel point, and it's leb. The word leb in Hebrew is heart. So when you have the heart, it doesn't mean the pumper of blood. It means the core of a being. Just exactly like you said, if you talked about a tree and you talked about the heart of the tree. Because when I was little, my grandfather was, he sawmill in the winter, farmed in the summer, and in the sawmill he was always looking for, if he could find heart pine. Heart pine generally to get a good heart pine tree, it took 80 to 140, 150 years of growing time to get a pine tree that's that big, that's hard. But if you take those trees like that and get the heart out of that tree, ain't no telling how long they'll last. They won't rot. They'll just last forever. And they built houses out of that, hundreds of years ago.
That's what these beans are.
Yeah, there you go. There's heart pine right there. Those beans. And I'm going to tell you, it takes a long time to grow a tree that big and that straight to get them beams. So it's hard to find them today. They are up on the mountains there in North Georgia in the National Forest area. There are some pine trees up there, they say, between 300 and 500 years old. And they're massive, huge, massive trees. But anyway, let me read you this passage of Scripture again. Verse 10 says, and Johanna begat Azariah. Johanna, that name means love. It means love that gives life. That's what his name is. His name is symbolic. And also has the ideology behind it with mercy, because generally we equate love and mercy together as the same thing. So that's what Johanna's name means. So this is what's begetting what. And then Azariah just simply means strength, or he that has the ability to hear. Azariah. So love begets this strength and ability to hear. Now can you hear that just by using names? Tremendous revelation if you understand. These are not just names of people. These are characters of a deeper story. And I think all of us, we're wanting to draw from the deep water, right? That's where get the nourishment out of the depth, the deeper water. So here we go. Azariah, his name just simply means strength, or he that hears. It is he that executed the priest's office in the temple. The word temple here is ba'it. Ba'it. This is the word Beth, from which the word ba'it comes from. So the temple is the ba'it, the Beth, which is the house of God, which is the physical body. Nothing really should be any clearer than that for any of us.
Yeah.
So then you could ask the question, well, where is God at? Where does God live? In His house, in its temple, in its sanctuary, which you are, which the New Testament tells us that so abundantly clear. But we don't embrace that. We think God's out there somewhere on the throne in heaven. That's what they convinced us. And so we have this division in the depth of our thinking, not knowing that we are divided in the depth of our thinking, because when we have a calamity, we have something that don't go wrong, we want to get a hold of God. So what are we trying to do? Well, I'm going to pray. Oh God, oh Father. No. And what I do, I engage in this thing I've been called prayer. Rather than to shut all of my mental noise down, I call it thinking. And you know we do it all the time. And generally when you will really chase your thinking down, you'll see that it's either something that's in the past that you thought happened, or something that's in the future that ain't happened, and it has nothing to do with right now. You don't have to think about right now because it is. Amen. Y'all don't have to shout me down now. That's good preaching. I mean, because we get caught in this and we want to draw back on this mode that we've been taught called prayer, rather than to get quiet and shut all of the mental noise down that I call thinking about the past or the future, what they did or didn't did, or what it will be or it won't be, and get in the very moment of the presence. And when I do that, I can tap into the power, and guess what? The power is resident in the house.
Amen.
Yeah, hallelujah. And so this is what the temple of soul, that's the word. Actually, it's a Spanish word, S-O-L, for sun. It's also used in Egyptology and mythology. Soul is the sun, the S-U-N. Why? Because it's the place of energy. It's the place of power. It's the place of life. So when I do that, and you know, there are a lot of schools of thought now to take some time in the morning in any way possible, especially between 6 and 10, 6 in the morning and 10, because of that window of certain creative energy that the sun is emanating. You have to realize that the sun moves incrementally and the energy changes as you move through the day. And so there is a guy that I highly recommend, Dr. Jack Kruse, K-R-U-S-E, Dr. Jack Kruse. He is a neurologist. He's a brain surgeon. He lives in New Orleans. And he is one of the most phenomenal neurosurgeons now that is all about, he's not about sun worship. He's not a Christian. But he is filled with the wisdom of God, and he teaches about how to get into the sun and draw its energy, and how to receive from what we call natura in Egypt, or Egyptology, is where we get the word nature. From the natural resources that are all around me, all of the time. Even on a morning like today, it's cloudy, but the sun's still there, and the energy's still emanating through the cloud.
Yeah.
It's just up to us to take the time, and again, it goes back to those things we were talking this morning around. It goes back to the disciplines. I don't want to do it, it's too hard. You know what I would say? Then don't. Until you come to a place and you say, well, I'd rather do hard than to go to the hospital. Or had we. So I'm trying to make a point, and that point is that the Temple of Solomon was not a structure that's built somewhere in the Middle East, and one of the days they go and find it. It's just not there. It's not true. That you are the Temple of Solomon. You are the temple that the soul, the Son, has built for its habitation, which is God. God's built you. And of course, you know, people say, oh my God, he said the Son was God. I did. I did. So, and how God inhabits this temple and moves into it is phenomenal. He moves into it with a divine dance of the thing that's called soul and spirit. And as we begin to see, the more we begin to recognize the soul and the spirit and their joint relationship, and their joint relationship is explained throughout scriptures with either twin boys or two boys. Most all the time, the stories of two boys, whether it's the story of Thomas and Jesus, or it's the story of Jacob and Ishmael or etc. going on with any of the stories. You find all these stories of the two boys. It's a story of the soul and the spirit, and how that they are joined together to work together to enhance you and me in this journey of God in this physical manifest world. So I wrote this. This is about Sanskrit, and I call this soul the image of God, because the soul is the image of God in Genesis 1, as we see it, as we start to see it. It says in ancient philosophy, the term nada, y'all all heard that term, I'm sure, nada, means tube, pipe, nerve, blood vessel. So the biologist, the neurologist, the scientist of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago would use this term instead of a blood vessel or a nerve, you know, because in your body is filled with blood vessels and nerves, and they run together, but they're not the same thing, but they do run together. If you cut your toe or stump your toe, you feel it from the nerve, but if you cut the skin, you break the skin, you bleed from the blood, right? And so these are joint energies in your body. That's your soul and your spirit. These are joint energies in your body working together as twins or as two boys or two energies together for your greater good.
Wow.
So you got to see, when you look at the stories of these boys in Scripture, you'll start to see them happening. Yeah, but yet we've been told to look at one of them, we're going to kill him and get rid of him because he's your ego. You know, he's bad. Rather than the whole idea, no, don't kill it and get rid of it. Redeem it so it serves you in a greater fashion and for a greater purpose. I keep saying the ego is not something bad. The ego, we're taught to try to kill it and destroy it and get rid of it. But the ego is the manifest physical part of the soul. Because that's how God sees, feels, smells, tastes, touch, hears, all of the things that you and me experience through the sensual apparatus. That's how God sees, smells, smells, through that avenue. So there's not anything wrong with it, other than when it gets control of my life and your life, then it may not serve you for your greater good. It may lead you down a path for your damnation and your harm. And I find that to be true in all of us. In all of us. So again, everything that I would share, everything I purpose to share, at least everything I strive to try to share, is personal investigation. It ain't got nothing to do with throwing a stone at anybody. I ain't down on anybody, even though I may really cut down and talk about the Catholic or Roman Church or put down on different false concepts and ideas. I'm not trying to say something derogatory about the people or the lies that's promoted on TV by the preachers. I'm not trying to condemn the people. I'm trying to say there's a message that's there that we don't need to hear. It's a message that will lead you in a place that won't serve you. And people are finding this out more and more and more. So in the ancient philosophy, the term nada means tube, pipe, nerve, blood vessel, and so forth. These are channels through which energy flows through the physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body. Three bodies. Now, we can call those three bodies mind, will, and emotions, don't we? We have these. And you can also call them, if you're looking at them from a spiritual perspective, you can call them light, life, and love. And so you'll begin to see this triology, this three. You'll see it over and over and over, just like I showed you last night when I put it on the board and showed you the 3 is actually the 12. Y'all remember that? We'll put it back maybe in a minute so you can see it, so that you can incorporate it in your thinking. So if I'm talking about the 3, mind, will, and emotion, or I'm talking about the light, life, and love, anytime I'm talking about that group of 3, I'm actually talking about the 12. The whole thing. Not part of the whole thing.
So, like 5 and 4 would be 9.
Mm-hmm.
Could you take like any number at the lowest digit and step it up, like say 4, 5 and 4, or 4 and 5, and add to the meaning of the 9 by going backwards that way?
Absolutely. Just like you can take 7 and 5. 7 is a perfect number. We call it the number of completion and perfection. It's the number for the physical body. 7 always represents the physical body. Well, is the physical body complete and perfect? Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with it. It's what we do to it, or what we do with it, or what we allow it to do. Many times that's the only problem. There's nothing wrong with the physical body. It gets out of kilter generally because of our care for it, or lack of care for it. So yes, just like we were talking about last night, just like with the 9 and 3. That to me is that's what I'm chewing on for a long time. It takes 9 months to gestate you and make the temple manifest. The temple, the building and the creation of the temple happened the night your mom and dad made love, and that seed penetrated that egg. Boom, that was the temple. It was all, the soul spirit had all of the information in them that moment. It had not materialized because it had not gone through gestation. The gestation was just the period of time it took to build the house, without the sound of the hammer and without the saw in the womb of your mama. So, hallelujah. So the physical body, the subtle body, and the casual body, those 3 bodies, they all have this energy flow. In this ancient wisdom, these nada, or points of intensity, or points of energy, are called nada chakras. The word chakra, or chakra, however you like to pronounce chakra, it just simply means points of energy. And there are 7 major points, but in many of the Hindu philosophy, in the Upanishad and other of the ancient wisdom writings, much of that material says there are literally millions of these. And why? Because they're following all of your nerves and all of your nerve endings. That's the points of energy. But there are major points. So, and they're called nada chakras. The number of these nada chakras in the wisdom are said to be in the millions. They are divided into 3 important nadas: the Ida, y'all have heard of these, I'm sure. The Ida and the nada in the left, the Ida and the nada in the left side of the body, but it's in the right side of the brain. Have you ever seen somebody have a stroke on this side and this side don't work, right? It's the same thing. It's saying exactly the same thing. This side controls the right side, controls the left side, right? The left side controls the right side. So it does that crisscross, right? Yeah, okay. So, and that's, gosh, they knew all this biological information and much, much more thousands of years ago. They knew more about how the body operates and works then than we do now. And now what we're trying to learn through quantum science, now we're trying to learn how it worked, and they're finding out, whoa, this ancient wisdom was already written for thousands of years. And they're finding this out. So they weren't as ignorant as we thought they were. So anyway, you have these nada points were divided into 3. The Ida, which is the nada of the left side of the body, but the right side of the brain, and the Pingala, which is the nada in the right side of the body and the left side of the brain, and the Sushuma, which is the nada in the center of the spine. And remember when Jesus said that you need to go the narrow way? Well, in the philosophies of the ancient wisdom, that would be the Sushuma. That's the center way. It's the middle path. It's always the middle path line. It's the middle path that connects both paths of the left and the right. Or we go to the extreme, to the masculine, or to the feminine, or what's even worse, we keep them divided. It's that woman you gave me. She said, hell no, it ain't. It's that man that you gave me. And so we keep it all divided, rather than to realize, no, the two are one. Had nothing to do. Genesis chapter 2, the two that God joined together had nothing to do with a male species and a feminine species. And God says, when y'all stand here and say, now do you take this woman, do you take this man, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, now y'all two shall be one. That's bull. That's religion. That's what we have had shoved down our throat. And they go back to Genesis chapter 2, and then they say, now what God joined together, let nobody put it asunder. What God joined together are these points of energy. Your right and your left, your male and your female. God joined them together, and we've done everything to separate them. Try to keep them apart. So when we close that gap, when we let that gap begin to close and we incorporate myself with myself, I'm married to myself, and I begin to realize I am precious, I am a gift, and all of the marvelous things that God has declared that I am, because I am, then I won't be so mad at myself. I did or I didn't do. I should or I shouldn't. All of these other things that we do. Anyway, it goes on. I wrote this on further. It says, in Ubinasha, the natives penetrate the body from the soles of your feet to the crown of your head, and in them the prana, or the breath of life, and in that life abides the Atma, which is the absolute Shakta, creative of the animate and inanimate worlds. And all of those are just Sanskrit words, just simply say that God has inhabited me. That's basically all that. This exact ancient wisdom is recorded by the method of types and allegories, myths, stories, numerologies, astrology, etc., and so forth. And it's also recorded in the Torah, which are the first 5 books of the Bible. And instead of using these particular words, and I'll show you this in just a few minutes, instead of using the word Ada and Pingala, it uses the word Esh and Esha. And sad to say, we aren't familiar with that because that got translated man and woman. And we divided that, we separated that because we thought the story of Genesis 1, 2, and 3 was the story of a man and a woman and a snake, or the devil, and how that God had created them and then God lost them to this deception of this snake and this devil, not knowing that this snake or this serpent was the Sushama, the middle way, the way that we should have been paying attention to, that we should have listened to, that was to bring my male and my female together as one.
Amen.
And what we did is we just butchered the most beautiful piece of literature we've got. Genesis 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And to go back and to reclaim it and to go back and to grab it for what it truly was meant to be. To me, it is a passion of my life to do that very thing so that we can catch and redeem what we are and who we are, because we are the very house, the temple of the living God. So when you get into Hebrew mythology, same story, but use different names. Instead of calling it the Pingala or the Ida, we call it now the Esh and the Esha. And to say it in English terms, the man and the woman. But I am the man and the woman. And the Sushama, the serpent on the pole, that's what he's called, isn't it? The Sushama, the energy on the pole, the middle way. So when Jesus in Matthew 7 was talking about you should choose the middle way, he was saying you should be following the serpent. If we really knew, I mean, after all, we say that he was a Hebrew, and if he was a Hebrew, he had to know the Torah. And if he had to know the Torah, he knew it in its original script. Because many times he would speak of the codes, and it would be written of the codes, and the disciples said, I don't understand what you're saying. Why would that be? They didn't know the code. They didn't really know the language. And that's happened to us for hundreds. As a matter of fact, we are today a poor witness or a horrible witness of that thing that's happened. The Sushima, which refers to the center point, or the center way, or the axis in the middle, it's the middle column. And it's just like in, what is it, the Boaz and, I should know these, Because they are both hermetic, they're masonry, this middle way, these three columns are in everything. And when you get into the hermetic and masonry, you'll see this a lot. Now, I hardly ever took my stick man and broke him down like that. 3, 3, and 1. But that's how he's really broken down in Hermeticism. Because you have, what you have right here are 10, what they call sephirots. 10 sephirots. And these 10 sephirots are generally described like this. I'll show you how they're described in generally all ancient wisdom. Now even though those pictures look different, they are the same if you have an eye to see them. And I'll show you how they are the same. Because these refer to this wheel right here, the astrological wheel. I'm getting kind of sloppy with my wheel.
And that's called a tree of life, right?
That's exactly what that's called. That's called the Kabbalistic tree of life, which is where you get the tree of life in Genesis 1, or Genesis chapter 2. It's the tree of life. And so it's from this is light, life, and love. Or in Hebrew, or in the ancient material, this is Chokmah, Bina, and the crown, Keter. This is the Keter crown, Chokmah, and Bina. So this is God, this is male, and this is female. And this is what's called, and you can see this is all through the Temple of Solomon, this is all through the Tabernacle of David, this is all through the Tabernacle of Moses. Every bit of this is the tabernacle. Yeah. Do you know why? Because the tabernacle is the body. Yeah. It is the physical body. Yeah. So I don't care if you go back and you build the Tabernacle of Moses, or the Tabernacle of David, or the Tabernacle of Solomon, you're going to come up with this same thing right here. And so what you have, these are the shoulders, this is the belly, and it's from here the legs protrude. So this and this is the exact same thing. That's why you have these three here, and then this is the earth or the ground. Same thing's true right here. We would call this the gonads, the lowest chakra, the lowest, slowest center.
I guess that's the reason the Catholics make that sign.
Yeah, right there, exactly. They do that. Light, life, and love. That's what you see. All of this is all astrological. All of this astrological wisdom is known by the Roman Church. And the Roman Church knows how to use it for control and power, and have done it for almost 1700 years. They've used it for control and power. People are waking up to this wisdom now. And when you own this wisdom for yourself, now you are the master of your own life. You're not the master of the Baptist Church or the Assemblies of God Church or the Roman Church that wants to seek and control you. Now you're your own master.
Right.
So and the whole idea that was behind God is to you master yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And He energizes you to do that by being at home in you and empowering you.
Yeah.
But many times we lack the boldness to step out, to say, yes, I am and I can. Bless God. I'm going to shake the ground. Well, that's all right. Stand there for a while. Yeah, you get solid. The Sushuma, again, that's the middle way. That's called the serpent in Genesis chapter 3. Actually, in Hebrew, it's called the Nachesh. And here's the most phenomenal thing about the word Nachesh in Hebrew. It's one of the the non-words that I use when I'm talking about, many times, if I'm talking about the non-words, the Nachesh, the Neshama, the Nafesh, and the Nephilim. And all of those words, the way they are used, one of them is used for serpent, one of them is used for breath, one of them is used for soul, and one of them is used for giant. And do all of those have the same ideology behind them or the same energy in them? Absolutely yes. And when you realize that, you will realize that your soul is a giant, not because it has 12-foot stature, but because it has the wisdom, it has the knowledge of the power of God innate in it. And when you own that, you see that, you realize, I am that.
That's right. That's right.
And when we do that, do you think that don't change your walk? It changes everything about us. Everything about us. So when I own that, I own my serpent, my devil, bless God.
That's right.
I begin to realize I am Lucifer, the bringer of light.
That's right.
Because that's exactly what Jesus said that he was in Revelations. Jesus said, I am the bringer of light. And if we had used that word in Latin, Lucifer, instead of the Greek word that they use there, Jesus would have said, I am Lucifer. That don't smoke good in your pipe for most Christians. They can't grab that. I am the middle way.
That's right.
Because that's what he was saying. I am the middle way. I am the column. And you see these three columns right here are the columns that's always referred to in all of the ancient material. All of it. It's these three columns. And it's this column that reaches to the height of the heavens, that reaches to the depths of hell, that brings it all together.
That's the reason he said, I and the Father are one.
One. There's no difference. No difference at all. You have to say the same thing. We have to come to a point, to the place where we can say, I am. As he is, as God is, I is.
That's
I am. I'm the same thing. All right. Hallelujah. Y'all got all that, didn't you? Okay, I want you to, let's go back to Genesis and let me break this off, take it down, and I want to put some other stuff up here. Because all of that I just said is not what I was planning on saying.
yeah, but it showed them. Ooh, goodness gracious.
When you put all those parts, then can you correspond those to the things in the temple?
The different parts of the body, you can. Actually, you can correspond those different places to
Where they
different
sit,
organs.
where they
Yes.
this and that?
Yes, you can. You can. And
The way they said that.
Is the root chakra the omega?
yeah. The root chakra is different Hindu scripts. The root chakra would be your tailbone. Then they move up to your sexual organs as the second chakra up. I would personally put the root chakra as your gonads, your sexual organs. I mean, it's not to me it's not a big deal, not a difference. But in some Sanskrit or some Hindu wisdom or philosophy, or in Buddhist, the root chakra would be your tailbone. Okay? So, and that's fine. I don't have any, I'm not trying to put the sexual organs down at all. I think that they are as great a gift as the pineal gland. So I don't see, I'm not wanting to get rid of my pineal gland. So I'm not wanting to neuter any of my sex organs. I want them to function and work. I don't want my pineal gland to dry up and go away. You know, when that happens, if I calcify my pineal gland, then the eye of God's been blacked out. Because if that is the eye of God, and it is a very important gland in my physical body, so would my gonads be an important gland in my body.
Absolutely.
They would be something to cherish or to nourish and to keep functioning so that it functions. Not that it goes dormant. What good is the organ if it's dormant? You know, we want it functioning.
Right.
Well, is it through physical care of that organ, protection or whatever of that organ, that it continues to stay healthy and function? I think it's a no-brainer. I don't think that I would answer that for anybody. But you know what? I am very slouch and lazy sometimes at taking care of the house, of looking after the house, taking care of it. I mean, I'm not talking to y'all, I'm talking to me. I know I personally am slouched about it sometimes.
Me too.
So I'll try to get back over here on what I was talking about. So go with me. I want you to look at something this morning with me about mine in Genesis chapter 1. I should have left my two little characters up there. I didn't even think about relating this to these two characters. The one here that's called the Kabbalistic Tree of Life with the 10 and 3 columns, and the one over here where I use my stick man. My stick man goes from Genesis chapter 1 all the way through the book of Revelations with the number 7. It just because for me number 7 is the perfect number, it's the complete number. It always refers to the physical life, because that is the complete and the perfect house that God builds. And so it is the churches in the book of Revelation are the same thing as the yawns in Genesis chapter 1. And the reason that it uses all of the 7 things, some people say, well, why in Genesis chapter 1 does God start with the plants, the grass, the trees, and then progresses on up through that, through the bird kingdom, then through the fish kingdom, through the animal kingdom, and then through the human kingdom. And then, of course, we have carried that over to Genesis chapter 2, where it's kind of the reverse, and then Adam begins to name everything. And what we fail to realize, because we didn't know how to extract the Hebrew code, we couldn't look at the depth of the Hebrew code, really what Adam was doing in naming that, he was saying, that's what that is, that's not what I am. So when he named the animals, he was saying, I'm not an animal.
Right.
But what have we been taught? We are animals, and we act like animals, and we come from a monkey. But we didn't know that in the code, the only reason that he's designated, given designation, I am not a rose bush, I'm not an apple tree, I'm not a bird in the sky, I am a human. I am made as the image and representation of God as its temple. I'm not taking away from the fact that the plant, the grass, doesn't have soul in it. It does. Because it's the soul that's in the plant that has the print and the diagram of the plant. So the plant can be what the plant is.
I want to say something. Man, we are man and woman. Okay? We are not human. The fallen angel worshipers called us those names and wanted us to believe it.
Well, the idea, Phil, behind that ideology is that there is such a thing as a fallen angel, and there ain't. There is no such thing as a fallen angel. You just don't find that in Scripture. Now, I know people go to Genesis chapter 6 and they use the Nephiel. The Nephiel is used twice in the Hebrew language. Twice, and it's used right there in Genesis 6, and it's called giants. And it says they looked at these women and they fell. They did not do it. See, that is an idea that we have been told for hundreds and hundreds of years to try to say that there is a fallen group of angelic host out there that's in some kind of a warfare with God, and that's not true. But we have been taught that, and we embrace that whole ideology in Revelations chapter 12 when it talks about war in heaven and Michael fought and da-da-da-da-da, and we begin to look at that. We say, okay, here's where the fallen angels are fighting against the redeemed, sourceful angels, and they have this warfare. That is not what Revelations 12 is about. It is about the polemus. The word war is the word polemus in the Greek. It's where we get our word politic. It's what the word actually means the art to govern. So what happens is the art of governing is divine, and the divine source never lost anything of its ability to govern. And there is no archangel or archenemy of God or against God. We have been taught these things. I don't mean to be that passionate about that, but it's just something that I go on YouTube and I have a lot of people I really enjoy, and I extract a lot of things, and the minute they get on the Nephilim, I think, why don't you do just a little bit of deeper research, and you'll find that what you're saying is just simply not true about the giants. And I realize that's not a simple or easy thing to deal with. It's just so much about that we've heard about the Nephilim. or the other. It's like the Dogon people, which say that they are the ones that brought the marijuana plant to the earth. They're a tribe of indigenous people in West Africa. The Dogon people worship the dog star, and they have that word cannabis. Cannabis. You realize cannabis is in the Bible. Did you know? Most people don't have a clue that cannabis was a part of the anointing oil. That the formula for that anointing oil is given to us right here in the Scriptures, and a part of that anointing oil was made out of the cannabis plant. And it tells you that right there. So when you rub that oil all over it, oh, it's all good. It's just right there. And we've let religion and politics just steal everything from us, so that we don't really know what this marvelous book is really about. How that we have the whole herb kingdom that he said. It's a good resource right there for you folks. Lord, there's no telling what that we are missing out on, that our ancients knew about.
That's right.
I mean, you know, I have gone and smoked the pipe with the Indians. I have sat there and passed the pipe sitting there with them. I have actually closed my eyes and I've drawn from their nadirs. I've sat there and I have literally felt that energy all over me. And I'm looking at it in dark and I cannot see. Ain't nothing there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying. We've been there and done that. They knew a lot of these things. So anyway, the 10 that I'm using right here with the 3 columns are common teaching, and again they deal, as Phil said, they deal with the Father. That's why the top with the highest and the lowest, that's the height and the depth. That's heaven and hell. It's the Father. It's a source of all of our energy. That's where we all want to go to tap into, right? And so when I do that and I put the 3 above the stickman, I'm saying the stickman is drawing from that collection of the energy of 3, which again is the astrological wheel, the 12 powers. I'm drawing from the whole thing. Yeah. And you know, you with me, I am really praying, meditating, digging, open. I want to find out why I gestated for 9 months. Yeah. I want to close the gap.
Yes.
There's a tremendous truth I know in those 3 months. But that's in every one of us. So we all have that incomplete cycle in us. I mean, I don't think it makes us incomplete in any way, because I know that in the gestation period, all the 9 months I'm there, I extracted from the entire wheel, because it's the whole wheel that's working every day.
Yeah.
So that whole wheel, I'm getting energy of it in me, so that makes me complete. But yet, for some reason, I'm pushed out of the garden after a 9-month gestation period of building. And I think there is something in that 3. Wow, that just hit me. 3. That's what I'm talking about this morning. There's something in those 3 months. They can be the crown and the glory of my head. Wow. They could very well be that. I may have to engage that idea a little bit more. But here in Genesis chapter 1, you have this word, and this word is the word saith. And this word, guess what? That word is mentioned 10 times in Genesis chapter 1. And it's this Hebrew word. Aleph, Mem, and Rash. Rash has a 200 value, Mem has a 40 value, and the Aleph has a 1 value. So you have 241. And if you add that up, look what it adds up to. 7. And again, what I'm doing with gematria, and I do it a lot, try to do it a lot, is I try to get you to think. I'm trying to prod people to think about gematria, because generally when you reduce something like this word say it down and it comes up to a value of 7, I realize that is a complete word. The word said is not what we think of the word said. This is amir, alif, mim, rash, amir. That's what, but this is also this word. Think. I realize you can count, but it's used exactly that way in scriptures. So many times when you read the word think, it's the word said. But many times we don't think before we say it. Don't you get in trouble doing that? I know I get in trouble a lot because I just didn't think before I said it. But it's exactly the same word. So what it is, it's an emanation of energy. Have you ever noticed that sometimes when you say something, like for instance, if I say something with passion, it sounds like maybe I'm mad, and I may even be. But what I'm really saying is I'm passionate. I'm passionate about it. It's just like the word off in Hebrew. Alif fe. Off. That word is translated for wrath. But it's also translated for passion. So when it begins to talk about the wrath of God, it's not talking about God being angry, bless God, and I'm going to kill you. It's talking about God being passionate. And in His passion, He's very energetic about something He's doing or something it's doing. It's not mad. But how many of us? I know in my anger that I did not call passion, bless God, I straightened my kids out. And now I learned that after my grandchildren come along, I learned how to be a parent. I didn't learn that when the kids were little. And I tell my kids, I said, wait a minute, don't do as I did, now do as I say. You know what, Daddy, you'd already laid the example. I said, I know it, and it was wrong. Don't follow my pattern.
Yeah.
I did it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's a hard wrong to rewrite.
You know, it is, because you have to go along and apologize to your
Absolutely, I do it all the time. I do it all the time. In tears filled, I go tell them, I'm sorry. Forgive me, I did it wrong. I did it wrong. You know, thank God I've got 3 marvelous, wonderful daughters, and I've got 10 phenomenal grandkids.
So you have
But I did it wrong.
Yeah, you have to beg them, please don't do it that way.
Yes.
I was wrong.
Here, I'm going to tell you my extremes and how I was. When my oldest daughter, Rochelle, was in high school, of course she's in high school, she's listening to the popular songs on the radio, and so she wants to go buy an album or CD, or what we had back then were cassettes, you know. And she'd buy a cassette with one of her favorite whoever, you know, and I'd get the thing and break it and throw it away and say, I don't want you to listen to that demonic stuff. I mean, that is so stupid and wrong, but I did stuff like that. And then Rochelle, because she couldn't obey my command is, you are either at home at 11 o'clock or you're not. This is my house and you're going to abide by my rules in my house. And if you can't abide by my rules, then you get out. I kicked my own daughter out when she was 18-year-old because she wouldn't come home when I said to come home. That's how mean I was. And I was I was the pastor, bless God. I was the man of God. And then when my oldest granddaughter, 21-year-old, goes to her party and gets drunk, drives 30-something miles down the interstate, drunk or in cooler brown, going north on the southbound lane of I-75 between Chattanooga and Nashville, Tennessee. And it's only by the grace of God she didn't kill a whole slew of people in the middle of the night and herself, and wound up crossways between gas pumps and couldn't get out. The law finally captured her and put her in jail. Locked her up in jail, and I went up there, and the first thing that come out of me was, that's my grandbaby, and all I could do was weep and cry because I loved her, period. And I had a revelation of the divine love of God that's unconditional. I didn't have that when I was raising my children. I loved them as long as they did what I said. And that's what religion told you and me, that God loves you as long as you do what His laws tell you. That's a lie of the pit of hell. God loves you, period. There ain't nothing you can do. It's dumb to say God gave you free will and then tells you in a garden you can't do something. Ooh. My. This word said is used 10 times. It builds the foundation of the tree of life. And in that, Tree of life is where we have the astrological wheel. So in verse 26, and God said, again, verse 26, the energy of God emanated, let us make man as our image. That word image actually has to do with the astrological wheel and how that wheel works and what that wheel is designed to do as it works. So, I have no idea how long I've been going. How long have I been going, Kirby?
1 hour and 24 seconds.
Wow, okay, I figured I am an hour and I haven't got to my this is just the introduction. This is the introduction. I hadn't got to what I wanted to, the things I wanted to share. Because really what I wanted to do is I want to share, or if we have, maybe we can do it tomorrow, I don't know. I wanted to share what God said, which it's not a matter of God speaking, because the only vocal cords God has are yours. Your vocal cords are God's voice. And God's thinking is like it tells us in Isaiah, God's thinking and mine and your thinking is different. You may tell you why? Because God's thinking is always now. God's thinking is not based in memories from the past or in what could be for the future, because God is in the present moment. God's never out of now. God stays in now. So God's thoughts are always now. What things are. Not what they could be. What they are. That's where God is. As God's thoughts are higher than yours, it's just simply to say to you and me, as we are here, come up here where I am. Come up with me. Think the way I think. So really what I wanted to do is I wanted to tie said and thinking to mind, because it's rooted in mind. And the mind, your mind, is your soul. It is the blueprint, it's the diagram, it's that part of God. And it's co-joined. It's in co-relationship. It's in a divine dance with the Spirit. And there's not a spirit of man and a spirit of God. There just is the Spirit. And the Spirit is the power of God. It is the entire wheel of astrology. It is the ruach. That's the Hebrew word for spirit. It is that.